Most people think mayonnaise is one of those grocery items that simply doesn't matter. It's just a white creamy spread, right? Grab whichever jar is on sale, toss it into the shopping cart, and move on. But that's exactly how millions of people end up settling for sandwiches that taste ordinary instead of unforgettable. The truth is, the difference between a great mayonnaise and a disappointing one can completely change a burger, a potato salad, a tuna sandwich, or even a homemade dipping sauce. In blind taste tests, people are often surprised to discover their favorite brand isn't the one they've been buying for years. Habit is powerful, and grocery stores know it. We naturally reach for familiar labels because our brains associate familiarity with quality, even when better options are sitting right beside them. Today, we're looking at some of America's most recognizable mayonnaise brands. Some have built incredible reputations over decades but don't always live up to the hype, while others quietly outperform expectations without getting nearly as much attention. And trust me, by the time we reach the number one recommendation, you might never look at the mayonnaise aisle the same way again. Let's start with one of the most controversial names ever placed on a sandwich. If you've ever attended a family barbecue in America, you've probably seen Miracle Whip on the table. Many shoppers pick it up expecting classic mayonnaise because it looks similar and sits right beside it in grocery stores. But the first bite often catches people off guard. Instead of the rich, creamy flavor people expect, Miracle Whip delivers a noticeably sweeter and tangier taste because it isn't traditional mayonnaise at all. It's a salad dressing made with a different recipe. For fans, that's exactly what makes it special. They love the zip, the sweetness, and the nostalgic flavor that reminds them of childhood lunches. But for shoppers expecting a neutral, creamy mayo, the experience can be disappointing. It's like ordering vanilla ice cream and getting lemon sorbet. Neither is bad, but they're completely different experiences. Miracle Whip became popular during the Great Depression as an affordable alternative to mayonnaise, and that history helped build an incredibly loyal customer base. Many families still buy it today simply because it's what they've always known. Nostalgia is one of the strongest forces in consumer behavior. But if you're looking for classic mayonnaise flavor, there are stronger options ahead. Speaking of familiar names, our next brand proves that a famous logo doesn't always guarantee an unforgettable taste. Kraft is practically woven into American grocery culture, so it's no surprise many shoppers instinctively reach for Kraft Real Mayo. The expectation is simple: if Kraft makes it, it must be one of the best. And to be fair, Kraft Real Mayo isn't a bad product. It's creamy, dependable, and works well in everyday sandwiches. But compared to some of its biggest competitors, many people find the flavor surprisingly mild. Instead of adding richness and personality, it often blends quietly into the background. That's fine for simple meals, but when mayonnaise is meant to be the star ingredient, being forgettable can become a disadvantage. Think of it like watching a movie that's good enough to finish but impossible to remember a week later. Its texture is smooth enough for daily use, but many home cooks prefer richer mayonnaise for potato salads, burger sauces, and homemade aioli. So why does Kraft continue selling millions of jars every year? The answer is simple: familiarity. When shoppers face dozens of similar products, recognizable brands feel like the safest choice. It's a psychological shortcut that has worked for decades. There's nothing wrong with choosing the familiar, but it often means overlooking products that might suit your taste even better. Now things get even more interesting because the next brand looks every bit like a premium product. Beautiful packaging, upscale branding, and a higher price create one expectation: this has to be amazing. Sir Kensington's entered the mayonnaise market promising cleaner ingredients and a more modern take on a classic condiment. The jar itself practically whispers quality before you even open it. Many buyers expect a dramatic upgrade over regular supermarket mayonnaise. Then comes the taste test. For some people, Sir Kensington's absolutely delivers with its lighter, more delicate flavor. Others, however, expect something richer and creamier, especially considering the higher price. That's where opinions begin to split. Paying more automatically raises expectations, so even a good product can feel underwhelming if the improvement isn't dramatic. Sir Kensington's isn't trying to imitate traditional full-bodied mayonnaise. It's designed for people who prefer a lighter flavor profile and premium ingredients. For those shoppers, it may be exactly the right choice. But if you're expecting a classic rich mayo, the higher price can leave you wanting more. And that's the fascinating thing about food, our expectations often shape what we taste. But don't go anywhere, because next we're looking at a budget-friendly mayonnaise that surprises shoppers for reasons both good and bad, and after that we'll move into the brands that consistently earn praise from home cooks, chefs, and mayonnaise lovers across America. If you've ever walked into Walmart with a shopping list and a budget, you've probably noticed great value real mayonnaise sitting right beside the big national brands at a much lower price. And let's be honest, most of us have had that moment where we wonder, is paying extra really worth it? Store brands have improved dramatically over the past decade, and in some categories they're almost impossible to distinguish from the name brands. So expectations are actually pretty high. Many shoppers hope they're getting the exact same product for less money. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it isn't. Great value mayonnaise has a creamy texture, spreads easily, and works perfectly fine for everyday sandwiches or quick lunches. If you're making a simple turkey sandwich before work, chances are you won't notice much difference. But once you start using it in recipes where mayonnaise becomes one of the main ingredients, like potato salad, deviled eggs, coleslaw, or homemade burger sauce, some people notice that the flavor isn't quite as rich or as balanced as premium brands. One jar might taste perfectly smooth, while another feels just a little thinner than expected. It's not a dramatic difference, but consistency matters when you're trying to recreate a favorite family recipe. This is one of those products where value is clearly the biggest selling point. People don't buy it because they think it's the absolute best mayonnaise on the market. They buy it because it gets the job done without stretching the grocery budget. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. Consumer psychology tells us that when inflation rises and grocery bills climb, shoppers become much more willing to compromise slightly on flavor in exchange for meaningful savings. That's why private label products continue gaining popularity every year. The takeaway here isn't that great value is a bad mayonnaise. It's that it's built around affordability first and culinary excellence second. If saving money is your priority, it's a respectable option. But if you're chasing the richest flavor possible, there are stronger contenders coming up. And speaking of contenders, from this point forward we're moving into brands that consistently earn praise from home cooks and food lovers alike. Now things get interesting. Depending on where you live in the United States, the next jar may look completely unfamiliar or strangely familiar. That's because Best Foods is essentially the Western counterpart to another famous mayonnaise we'll talk about later. For decades, people on the West Coast have proudly defended Best Foods as the gold standard of mayonnaise, while many people in other parts of the country have barely heard of it. The funny part? Countless blind taste tests have shown that loyal fans often swear they can tell the difference between Best Foods and its Eastern counterpart, even though the recipes are extremely similar. It's a reminder that branding and regional loyalty can shape our perception just as much as taste itself. What people expect from Best Foods is a reliable, classic mayonnaise, and in many cases that's exactly what they get. The texture is thick without feeling heavy. The flavor has enough tang to brighten a sandwich without overpowering the other ingredients. It performs beautifully in everything from tuna salad to homemade ranch dressing, and that's why so many professional kitchens keep it stocked. Good mayonnaise isn't supposed to steal the spotlight. It's supposed to make everything around it taste better. Best Foods understands that balance remarkably well. Instead of shouting for attention, it quietly improves every bite. That's a harder trick than it sounds. In cooking, restraint is often more impressive than intensity. Many products try to stand out by making their flavor louder, sweeter, or tangier. Best Foods simply focuses on consistency. Jar after jar, recipe after recipe, it delivers the experience people expect. That's one reason it has maintained such a loyal customer base for generations. But while Best Foods is excellent, it still doesn't crack our top 5. Why? Because the brands ahead managed to create something even more memorable. And now we arrive at a name that has achieved almost legendary status in certain parts of America. If you've ever traveled through the South, you've probably noticed something curious. Mention mayonnaise in casual conversation and sooner or later someone will bring up Duke's. Not because they're paid to. Not because they're advertising it. But because they genuinely love it. That's not normal behavior for a condiment, yet Duke's has inspired that level of loyalty for decades. So what's the secret? Surprisingly, it's what isn't inside the jar. Unlike many traditional mayonnaise recipes, Duke's contains no added sugar. That single decision changes everything. Without sweetness competing for attention, the richness of the eggs and the tanginess of the vinegar become much more pronounced. The result is a mayonnaise that tastes bold, savory, and incredibly satisfying without feeling overwhelming. The first time many people try Duke's, they notice that it doesn't disappear into the sandwich. Instead, it enhances every ingredient around it. Burgers become juicier. BLTs feel richer. Deviled eggs suddenly taste like they came from a family recipe that's been perfected over generations. This is why Duke's has become something of a cultural icon throughout the South. It's not just another condiment. It's part of regional food identity. Barbecue competitions, church picnics, holiday gatherings, Duke's shows up everywhere. Consumer behavior researchers often talk about identity-based purchasing. Sometimes we don't buy products simply because they taste good. We buy them because they represent who we are, where we come from, or the traditions we grew up with. Duke's benefits from both exceptional flavor and powerful emotional connections. That's a combination that's incredibly difficult for competitors to match. But here's the twist. Despite all the praise surrounding Duke's, our countdown isn't over yet. Because the next few brands introduce flavors and textures that surprise even experienced food lovers, including one mayonnaise that didn't even originate in America yet has completely changed how millions of people think about this everyday condiment. And if you thought mayonnaise had already reached its peak, trust me, you haven't tasted what's coming next.